Customer needs and pain points, those should be synonymous. And if they're not, you're going to have a really hard time getting the product or service into people's hands. So it's very easy to think of new ideas, new features, new offerings, but is it something that people really need? And a really easy way to start learning about that is literally go to Google, try buying some AdWords.
Hey founders, my name is Tiago. I'm the founder of Librarian, an AI startup. Today I'll be having an in-depth conversation with Vinny Lauria on critical steps that startups need to take into consideration when developing and launching new products. Vinny is a founding partner at Golden Gate Ventures. He is based in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and is also a Kaufman Fellow and a guest lecturer at NUS. Enjoy. Hi, Vinny. How are you?
Good. Great. Hello, Tiago.
Thank you so much for taking the time, to share, your insights, of being an investor for like 12 plus years. I think the topic today is very relevant to any startup, that is in the process of launching a new solution, new product to the market. So whenever you thinking about, building your own product, your own solution, you need to understand the customer. My first question for you is, how do you go about, identifying those customer needs, and then, of course, based on those customer needs, to build a product that fits those pain points of the client?
I mean, basically, customer needs and pain points, those should be synonymous. And if they're not, you're going to have a really hard time getting the product or service into people's hands. So it's very easy to think of new ideas, new features, new offerings, but is it something that people really need? And a really easy way to start learning about that is literally go to Google, try buying some AdWords, run your service, see what terms people are searching. And so are you solving a pain point that people are actually looking for an answer to? Are there websites talking about tools and services, and you find that those don't really fulfill the need, or that the need has changed over time, or the tools haven't grown with new technology? But I think that's crucial. And I've seen a lot of startups that don't take that step. They just think about it as, I have a new idea, that is innovation, and I'll push that out to the market. And I can say I personally was guilty of that with my first startup.
Very, very, very interesting. So you buy some AdWords around the topic of the pain point you're trying to solve. And then once the AdWords are running, if nobody is actually doing any search about that pain point, maybe that pain point doesn't exist.
Correct. An example of that could be you're saying, hey, I want to build a 5 foot tall basketball hoop for kids or whatever instead of 10. And so are people going searching like kids basketball hoops or like shorter basketball hoops? And so, the way you can hack that is buying ads and then seeing the phrases that are searched around certain words in that ad.
So assuming I bought those AdWords and people are looking for shorter basket loops, and I sell a couple to, friends, family, whatever. They start using the kids, and then they start like giving the feedback, it's breaking, it's too short, too high, whatever. So the follow-up question that I have is, once you get those like first, closer, like beta testers of your product, how serious shall you take that initial feedback? Because the question that I always have in my mind is, how big of like a sample size do you need to have to really believe that this feedback that you're getting is actually valid to shape your product?
That's a great question. So I used to, this is 15 years ago, have this presentation in San Francisco that I would give, and it was called Use Your Users. And the whole idea was use your users to basically qualify that information. And the one thing I would start off with was this, in the old world economy, this nomenclature, the customer is always right. And I look at in the web world, mobile world, the customer is not always right. They can ask for millions of features, but they're one of a million. And, down to that critical mass. What's interesting is that there's really, you don't need a large number. If you do it the kind of product ranking style where people need a vote on a feature, you're going to drive yourself in the wrong direction. Because people will see like a really cool idea, a cool feature, everybody thumbs that up, and that moves to the top of the list, and then it self-fulfills. But if you leave it more, here's a feedback form, tell us the issue you have, what is your biggest complaint? And you literally only need to hear 3 or 4 people independently complaining about the same thing to know that is an opportunity. Now, it might be a bug that needs to be fixed, or it might be, hey, I'm doing cross-border payments and this only accepts one currency. And there was a portfolio company that we invested in that one of the things that led to them offering other currency was basically a bunch of customers complaining that they didn't have that. So I look at it as if you take that feedback completely independently, they're typing it up on their own. It's a complaint and multiple people are saying it. That is something you should be prioritizing.
Interesting. On my own customer interview form, I do ask first like an open-ended question, like what are your pain points about this subject? And then I always hide the examples because I've noticed if I start showing the example, oh, this one. Yep. So you're totally right. There's always like the topic of doing some market research, and VCs love to ask, how big is this market and so on. What the advice you have, for someone to evaluate that? Because I've been also in this industry for a while, and I've seen many decks, and they say, 10 trillion, whatever number they put there. You never know, right? If it's something more or less new, it's very difficult to identify how big the opportunity is.
It is very difficult. So I remember when I was pitching my second startup in the Valley on Sand Hill Road, and we were pitching a market size of 100 million. We were getting VCs that didn't want to talk to us. The market size is too small. To us, we're like, that's huge. If you're a startup, you really do, maybe not a trillion, but it needs to be this billions, $100 billion sort of opportunity. You need to be able to pitch that. Like that's what a VC wants to see, because ultimately at the end of the day, the VC is trying to get to $1 billion valuation company, which, means you're operating in something like that. So you do need to think about that. But at the same time, that's really difficult. Let's say you were pushing Slack out into the market. How are you going to qualify that for $1 billion where there's all these tools that people aren't paying for? So, what are you going to do to say what the market size and opportunity is? So this is where I realize that it's not always easy. The biggest takeaway I would have is really it should be driving the entrepreneur to be thinking really, really big and really thinking of the pain point from multiple dimensions. So I was to look at it this way or look at it this way or look at it this way. How could I size it up?
Okay. Interesting. Also, Vinny, you've been investing for like almost 15 years. You have 100 portfolio companies under Golden Gate. Can you share a success story where these guys did an amazing job in terms of understanding really what was the customer needs and pain points before they released their product?
If I can, I'm going to use a company outside of our portfolio.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So there's a company, people would be familiar with it. It's not as popular these days, Yelp. YELP, Yelp.com in the US. It's definitely gained more traction pre-mobile app sort of era, but they started from free folks and then built a huge company and went public. The reason why I'm using it as an example is because I have used it as an amazing product where so much of what the product looked like when they went public was in the original beta spec of the original sort of product. And so to have been able to get it that right from day one is phenomenal. And the team that started, they were PayPal Mafia founding members. So like they'd worked at another high growth startup, so they did know what to execute. But I've never really seen a product that has looked so consistent over time with the founding team getting it so right in the beginning. Everything else I've seen has been iterative and people building and changing. And that's not a bad thing. But I've always been blown away by how Yelp was so consistent for such a long time. But that ended up becoming their Achilles heel. And as everything went mobile and mobile apps, they were so stuck in this web sort of world, down to the point where the CEO is even saying, no, people write long reviews. We don't want them writing on the mobile. It's going to be too short. And so they refuse to kind of shift and change and adapt in a mobile world.
Okay, so that's a success case. Thank you for sharing. What about on the opposite side of the table? Someone that you can think of, like they thought they knew what clients wanted, then they launched and they're like, we're completely off the chart. This is not what they're looking for.
This will be one of my startups again, so I can talk to it from personal experience. Okay. One of the companies that we built, Lafora, online forum, message board platform communities. This was 2007. We really came, and this was before Eric Ries wrote some of his books, really built this product saying like, all right, we built one startup. We're engineers, developers, product people. We can do this again. And we set out building what we thought was an improvement and a much better way of interacting online to have a discussion, a thread. And we spent 3 to 4 months building that in a vacuum, put it out there, and invited all these people that were running big forums, communities, and said, what do you think about this? And all the feedback we got was negative. I mean, people saying it's crap. It doesn't look like a forum. I wouldn't want to use this. And that hurt because we'd spent so much time thinking about it and refining it. And we thought, we put out something that was really an improvement. But it made us go back to the drawing board. And that was a hard lesson. And it was a good lesson to have learned. And then flipped it completely on its upside down. So rather than building out all the functionality and having a polished product, we literally started with like the most basic thing. You can post a question and people can respond. There's no threading. There's no member profiles. There's no search. There's just none of that. And we shared it with the same group that told us our first product after 4 months looked like crap. And they said, oh, this looks more like a forum. Oh, I can understand this. Could you add, I really need this feature. Or I really need this discussion. And that is where I then firsthand learned that, all right, we're only going to be building things out when a lot of people start complaining, I need this.
Interesting. That always the same topic of when are you ready to go to market? And then I remember you sharing like, it's yesterday, don't wait. The faster you can release something to market, the faster you'll know if you're right or wrong.
I have anecdotes in a prior company before that where there was fights, physical fight, like a wooden chair got smashed on the floor. I'm serious of different, us having internally, the founders, different sort of viewpoints of, is it ready to go to market or not? But I am this big believer of getting it out there early, getting it out there raw, and getting that feedback is going to help you set direction. The counterpoint is, Steve Jobs at Apple, but most startup, even Steve Jobs at Apple, when he was building his wooden first Apple computer, realized that you have to start building up small. And it's only, 20, 30 years of experience later that you can say, no, I'm going to do this in a really controlled environment.
Yeah. It's a very unique case. So, assuming you spoke with a lot of potential future clients, you understood what they needed, you put your head down, you go and work on a product really hard, and then, okay, you're ready to launch it to the market. So in terms of go-to-market strategies, to make sure that you'll get those first very important clients, what is your recommendations in terms of launch strategies? The strategy to go to market for a B2C solution, is it the same as a B2B solution? If not, then what are the differences?
Technically, yeah, there's B2C, B2B. There's different ways of really reaching the audience, but there are a lot of similar overlaps. So one thing you have to know is there's something called early adopters. These are people who like playing around with new technology. They hang out on Product Hunt. They're terrible customers. And so a lot of startups get into the idea of this is, check it out. They're using it, but they don't stick around long term. The pain points they have or the features they're looking for doesn't necessarily represent your larger target customer base. So I think it's really important to realize that. And this is where I go back to Google search again. So rather than saying, I want to get some, news on TechCrunch or get on Product Hunt, I say, go to Google and buy keywords. Again, I need a shorter basketball hoop, and just literally buy traffic for people searching for that specific pain point or problem. And these are really qualified users. And you can have a special landing page for them. You can even, before your product is even launched, you could have, we're in closed beta. If you want to apply to, be invited, please leave your information here. And so you can even do that before you have the product launched. So you're collecting these users. That is one way to get people that really need your service or offering. I think as you start expanding though, the technical ways you would actually reach a consumer audience versus a B2B audience will be very different.
Okay, interesting. Once you get those first users, the ones that are searching for this kind of product or solution on Google, they start using your product. What kind of metrics, you usually like to see on those, first, few months to measure is this go-to-market strategy working or not?
Stickiness, retention. Basically, are they hyper addicted? It'd be better to have a smaller user base that has behavior showing that they use the service, the app frequently, daily, multiple times a day, than to have a lot of people that try it once a week. And that's the magic. When I first met Carousel, so everybody in Singapore be familiar with Carousel, NUS alum, met them. It was actually a startup weekend where they were just hacking together an idea, but they were passionate about it, turned it into a product. And when I reconnected with them, I saw their Google Analytics, and it looked like a heartbeat. It was like flat, peak, flat, peak. And I look at it and I knew instantly what that was. And I was like, you have a retention problem. And they were like, how do you know? And I was like, because my first startup had that same sort of thing. The peak is you get some press, a bunch of people check it out. And the flat, that is not even retention. That is churn. You just have that many people churning that the visitors look flat. And so then basically now that becomes an opportunity. It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. Like, let's think about what sort of features that need to be built into this product to get people sticking around or coming back. And then if you put your innovation hat on and you think about what could I build into the product that people aren't necessarily asking for, but it's going to make them come back. Maybe it's a notification, something that they did. There's a notification that goes out a few hours later. Maybe that's an interaction with another user on the platform. Maybe that is, hey, we've uploaded some additional data that your service can work with. These things will get people back. And if you're able to get people back and then get them to continue doing something on the platform, that is a really important metric, KPI to be tracking.
Interesting. So two things come to my mind when to hear you say, it's about the retention, not, the top line, because sometimes, a lot of companies will like to say, we have 10 million users, whatever. From what you're saying, it doesn't mean nothing, right? Because if those 10 million users are there today and then tomorrow they're gone, yeah. What's the point, right? So that's
right. Just very ask IRL and SoftBank.
Exactly. Yes, that's true. And then and the second one that comes to my mind about like the remembering that the app is there. I was just like, as you were talking, I was just thinking about some of these social networks, and even Google Photos does that, right? From time to time, they send you push notification. Hey, here's this album, like whatever party you did 1 year ago, and it's a good way, to just remember I'm here, right? And then you click and you see these pictures, and then sometimes you share the album with someone, and it's a smart way just to remind you that we are here. We still exist.
Correct. And that's even on Facebook. It's like, here's a memory from 10 years ago. And then like one click to repost it. So they're getting you to engage and then getting you. So like all of that stickiness and retention. And that's really valuable. What we did before where we had forums is we knew getting content on the platform was really hard. You're an admin. You started at a new forum. You need people so we would actually give them a tool that would allow them to scrape the web and create some discussions off of other content on the web. So now if anybody did land on the website, they don't look at an empty forum. They see what looks like discussions that have been started and they can participate in.
That's smart. Oh, that's good.
Again, so that's not a feature that somebody was asking for, but that is something that so at the end of the day, you need to, add your own little savviness to it, saying like, hey, this is, chicken or the egg. Every large startup we know about in the world somehow hacked one side of that chicken or the egg problem. It is not purely organic and pure luck. They've really engineered the answer to one side of that problem.
Yeah, until it gets big enough, and then it just becomes
and then there's a flywheel effect. Yes,
flywheel effect. Okay, interesting. Third topic about the go-to-market. So this is, I think, could be in the minds of every startup around the world. You raise that initial money, that seed capital, sometimes even from an angel investor. And the things you're saying, like the Google ads, it doesn't sound like very expensive, but there's always like a limitation in terms of the budget that startups have, the resources, the people they have hired. Do you have any insights, tips that you could share with all the founders with limited resources? They can, hack this kind of strategies to that get those first initial users?
I'll share a few different thoughts here. So number one, what I do think can separate a successful CEO from an unsuccessful CEO is one that can understand how to prioritize that, where to say no, where to make cuts, where to drive more resources versus less. That is a skill set that is hard to learn, and some people are just natural at it. That being said, like when with Google Ads, the idea of like $40 a week, that's enough in terms of a budget. Going back to, all right, I need to raise some money to hire an engineering team. So this is where I'm saying, all right, then buy the form, put up some mock-ups and make it look like there's a product that exists and say, but it's closed beta. Please be added to the waiting list. Maybe you can use that to raise some angel money, because now you could say, like, look how many people are waiting to join this. So I don't think there's one tool or hack that, works for everybody, but just the idea of really stepping away. Like, I set out to build X, but I need N dollars to do that. Is there a way I can emulate that or represent that through user demand or interest or through email signups, whatever that might be, so that I could show to an investor that this is something worth backing? And your earliest investors, if you're a startup, are generally going to be angel investors. And the angel investor isn't even a third party person that you go find on LinkedIn. It could be your uncle, and one of my angel investors was my former manager at IBM, somebody that worked with me and knew, and it wasn't necessarily a large check, but it was something that, helped fuel the fire.
I remember in one interview that I listened from you like a few years back, like where people discuss, oh, we don't have, like money to do like research. And then you said, well, you can always invite like a bunch of friends and family, just offer free pizza, they'll come, and then you can do some customer surveys. So that just reminded me, you just need to think outside the box.
Yeah. So, and just even to share that, this was like before the day of like Zoom, where you could like do a screen recording and record. Like, we were in San Francisco, and again, LaFora's, when we were doing product development, and we just wanted to actually see people using it. Where did they get hung up? Hear them talk out loud. What are they trying to do? We gave them a few prompts, like create a forum, upload a photo, but wanted to see where they were getting hung up, because you can see in the data where things stop off, but you don't know necessarily why that happens. So this is where it was so important to get random kind of people in doing it and giving them these tasks, even if they're not going to end up being a forum owner. At least, where do they get confused? So that's where we did that. We posted on Craigslist, like, hey, come do some user testing. We'll make it free. It's at a fun little startup. We have a cool office downtown, and you get some free pizza. And we got 20 people signed up. We probably invited like 6 or 7 down based on asking them some questions. Yeah. So really, again, if you think creatively, you really don't need to put a lot of money and resources to get that sort of outcome you need.
Yeah. Even myself right now, because I still, have people, coming to me and trying to pitch to Golden Gate. Of course, I'll take the meeting, whatever, but I always say, I need, 20 minutes of you to do a customer interview for my product. And of course, people say yes.
Yeah. Or like, I even did things, like, all right, we'll take the meeting, but like, give me a 5-star review on some other platform.
Win-win. Yeah. Sounds good. All right. Can you share like one example that you can think from the top of your head that they were amazing in the go-to-market strategy?
I'll share a few different anecdotes. And I'm generally of the nature that those campaigns of get something free or invite people don't actually work. So in the case with Carousel, they focused on university students because they were still in university, and it was around buying and selling textbooks. That wasn't the original idea. It really started from buying and selling used camera equipment, but they realized, oh, here's an audience we can kind of tap in with, and we know that there's a need here. And so they went to something very niche. I'm sure you can find college textbooks on the platform now, but back then that was an odd vertical, but it was something that they knew they could get some demand for. And then they went horizontal from there. So that's an example. MySpace, this is, Facebook pre-Fencer, but the way they started was with bands and so bands would want to have a following, like, come to watch me live. And now I want to send updates where we're going to be playing live. So that was the niche audience that they plugged into, that basically you had one side wanting to promote themselves, really wanting to push it out there. So they were getting everybody's email addresses or saying, follow us here. And so they really focused on musicians and bands in LA. So what I'm sharing here is that a lot of this early growth may not be your larger core sort of audience, but there's a path there to get to that larger core audience, and the same functionality can serve what they need as your larger audience.
Oh, that's pretty smart. You know what? Today I asked our team at Golden Gate about that channel that we have for all portfolio companies. If that was something expensive, and our finance person from Golden Gate said, "No, Tiago, it's free." And then I thought, "Oh, why is it free?" Of course, it's free because if you're a VC, you have 100 startups, and you create a channel like a Slack account for those 100. Portfolio companies, guess what? You're getting those 100 founders to sign up for Slack and start using Slack, even if it's only to communicate with your investor.
Yeah, because we have the external Slack. It's basically the free version just doesn't give history, but you can have unlimited users. Yeah, so we opted that way. That's more scalable. And what I'll say is firsthand, things that hadn't worked. We were a startup in Palo Alto, so Stanford being epicenter of a lot of ideas, technology, cool stuff. We would go to Stanford. We had a rickshaw. We would take people on free rickshaw rides and give them postcards. Download our app, use our app. We would do these. We would jump into the fountains, like publicity stunts and stuff like that. None of that translated into users. Sometimes we get press about it. We get covered on TechCrunch for parties and stuff, but it did never translate to users.
Interesting. Okay. You launch, you think you are addressing whatever the conclusions you got from your customer interviews. You really think that your product is going to solve those pain points. How many times have you seen where someone got it right at the first time? I think that's very rare.
I think that is very rare.
So you'll have to adjust your product, and sometimes you have to go as far as like just dropping whatever you were working on and start something new on the side. The first question I have around this topic is, how do you recognize that it's time to change something in your product or even pivot? And the reason I want to ask you this question is because I've met many founders where they feel attached to the product, like you were saying about your own Lafora. It's kind of like your baby. And sometimes it's very painful. You go to market and then people say, "No, this is terrible. That's not what we're looking for." What is important from a founder perspective, to get to that point where they need to recognize, okay, this is not working. We really need to change something.
It's really hard, and it's exceptionally hard for first-time founders. It's one reason I actually like when I meet a group of founders that worked together before on a failed startup. I see that as a positive thing. And there have been failed groups that have come to me that have tried to brush on the table or hide kind of their past. Because other VCs kind of look negatively on it. And I'm like, well, what have you learned? How long did it take you to learn? What sort of fights did you guys get into? Why do you still want to continue working together? So to me, the only way really to learn it is by, stretching the rubber band too far and it snaps, not to stretch the rubber band as far next time. So I think it's really the only way you can learn it. And so when you're young, and you're passionate, you're emotional, you're definitely in a queue trying to drive something forward because you don't know, do I need 2 more months of this? But once you've gone through that experience of, all right, this has been too far, it becomes a lot easier. And that's how you mature as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a leader, to recognize that and know not to do that the next time. Y Combinator, I think, does a phenomenal job of really getting people to think about iterating. I don't even want to use the word pivoting, but iterating. Okay. I've been, investors in startups where, the founder, after raising, $5-10 million, wants to change direction. And if the data is pointing to, the direction they were going is not good, we could advocate for that. But I've seen it where other shareholders, board members, or just the opposite are, we invested in X, how dare you change? But you need to be able to adapt. And if there's data that's showing that this is not working and a CEO that's willing to say, I'm going to try a new direction, that's incredibly progressive. That's incredibly great. And I wish there was more VCs that supported that. I guess if I was to leave people with, how do you know, I really come back to this stickiness, because you'll always get people willing to try it out. But if you don't have people using your service on a daily basis or minimum, multiple times a week over 4, consecutive weeks, there's something there that says there's something missing.
Is that how you usually recommend startups to go about this decision? Look at the data, speak with your investors, speak with the advisors, speak with your customers again, until you are really clear that this is the way to go? Is that what you recommend?
I do. And this is where I will say, you could also treat VCs as research. If you're going around and you're pitching 20 different VCs and they pass and they're giving you the same reasons, and usually you'll hear a lot of common threads, you should listen to that. So don't take one VC's opinion. They said X, I'm going to do that. But if three independent VCs that don't know you, that are looking to invest, give you the same sort of feedback of where the product is outside of the needs, you should really, really take that. And that could be a reason to say, hey, we should actually slightly shift our direction. But yeah, everybody that you mentioned, stakeholders, advisors, senior people, even competitors, it's the web, it's really large. So you should know your peers, your competitors, other peers in the space, and understand what makes them valuable, what makes you valuable, and does that actually resonate correctly with the customers, users?
You've decided this is not working, we need to do something else. How do you go about that adjustment? Because it's very tough, right? We spoke about the founder, admitting it's not what customers wanted, we fail. The team will be, very disappointed, the morale will be down. You may be short on cash, you just spend like a lot of money paying people's salary, working on this product for the past few months. And now we need to change. We need to iterate, pivot. How do you go about that execution? Because you may be even running out of money. Like you have 2 months of runway and you think, oh, if I pivot right now, that means starting from scratch and we may run out of money before the product is ready to go to market.
So a few things there. Number one, if you're pivoting while you have 2 months of runway, you've done it too late and you're going to most likely crash and burn. And that's not fair to any stakeholders, employees, investors. Like as a leader, executive, founder, you need to be making these decisions much earlier and giving yourself the time. So
what do you say would be the minimum? Yeah.
Okay, 6 months. 6 months to make any sort of direction change, because it's going to take 3 months just to really kind of get it out there and show some traction. So minimum 6 months. Okay. And again, as a leader, you need to be able to forecast and project that is a skill set. And if you can't do this here, how are you going to do it at scale when you're making $1 million and $1 billion sort of questions in front of you? I think the other thing is, as a leader, founder, you're responsible to inspire people, inspire the team. And so you can't just come that, all right, today we're doing something new because some VC told me. You really need to set that mission, that vision, purpose, why you're doing this, and get the whole team bought into it. And if you can't, there's a challenge there and need to kind of work on that. And other stakeholders, you need to if you have a board, get them bought into it. If you have investors, get shareholders, get them bought into it. So that's another important element. So it's not just saying, I've recognized this, but you've set everybody going off in one direction. You're changing that direction, and now you need to give them a reason why and motivate them for the new direction. You don't want them dragging you back to the original, because there will be some people be like, no, that's why I joined this company. I love that pain point. We should be working on that. They're constantly going to be working against you.
Yeah. I can imagine that, like, this engineer, coding like crazy for the last 3 months, and then he sees his, all his hard work, putting on the shelf, and then, oh, now you're going to work on something else. Yeah, the first thought, it's natural, right? Human nature, like, oh, here he's asking me now to work on this new thing, and who's telling me that this time will work, right? Maybe after 3 months, it's going to be again. So yeah, I think that's a huge challenge. Yeah, and it's the responsibility of the founders, to make sure everyone is motivated. All right, can you share a success story where they were not going anywhere? I mean, you mentioned a little bit of Carousel and then the secondhand books, right? But they're not going anywhere, no traction at all. And then they just went back to the drawing boards. They pivot or change, adjust the product to something else. And then suddenly it became a huge success when they did that.
Sure. Send It comes to mind. So that's payment service that started in Indonesia that's now regional. When they started out, they were focused on cross-border remittance. They were even using crypto to help with some of that. You want to send money from Hong Kong to Indonesia. That was the original sort of idea. That did not get a lot of traction. So then they pivoted, and it was around splitting the bill. You're out with a bunch of friends at a restaurant, or you have a house with roommates, and splitting finances that way. That also did not get a lot of traction. And it was then when they went into actually, somebody had used the platform, was a small little e-commerce shop that basically needed to scrape a bank account to reconcile some transactions. And so they wrote a scraper to do that, and then realized, oh, this is a pain point that not only this customer needs, but other customers need, and really built off of that. So there was actually more iterations than that. I kind of simplified it, but it's 3 directional changes, all related to the payment space, but very different product, very different customers. And ultimately got them onto an incredibly successful path.
Interesting. Okay. And now again, in the flip side, like bad examples where they didn't pivot and then kind of done. I mean, you mentioned Yelp, like the CEO saying, oh, everyone wants to use a computer. When you were talking about that, I kept thinking in my head about BlackBerry, because I remember BlackBerry CEO saying nobody will want to, type on the screen. They always need this physical keyboard on the phones, and look what happened to them. Can you also think of an example where, this founder, CEO, whatever, they were so stubborn, right? They didn't see what is in front of them. They didn't want to acknowledge that the product was not going anywhere, and they ended up like not, changing in time and running out of cash, or, dying.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So I'd rather like not call out any like smaller sort of startup for like, hey, dying, but like even on our Golden Gate Ventures website, we put, companies that, had to shut down. And we kind of we put it out there publicly that we invest in them, and then highlighted that, they're no longer around. I look at it as it happens common enough, and it's part of the entrepreneurial journey, that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It should be a learning sort of experience. Hence going back to my thought of, if a group of founders have started something before that actually failed and they're decided to work together again, that's a really good sign. And as a VC, as you shared, that we have a portfolio of 100 companies, we understand we're investing in very high risk, and some of them will fail. But again, to me, there are definitely data points, signs, forks in the road where CEOs could choose to navigate a different direction. And we're trying to work with our earlier stage portfolio companies on that. But it happens frequently, and it happens everywhere across the world. Just on our kind of like last topic of either pivoting or shutting down, again, for a first-time founder, really try to leverage on people that have gone through it a few times, whether they're other CEOs or VCs that have operational experience or been investing in this space. But if there's people that kind of have that sort of seasoned experience, that's really, really valuable. And you should definitely listen to that. And if they're saying something's not working because of X, like really take that to heart.
So thank you for taking the time to join us and, sharing your very valuable insights with all the startups out there.
Thanks, Tiago. It's been great.
All right. See you soon. Bye.